Hey guys, it's Barbie from Two Friends in the Bible. I am here today, August the 16th in 2022, and I'm going to be giving updates on some news that I know about. And I've been writing stuff down for several days, so I might kind of be reading offline, like I might talk about Iran and then go to China and then back to Iran. So just bear with me on that. But as things are coming in, I start writing it. So the first thing I want to talk about, though, before we get started on it, is I want to talk about the prophets again. And I know I've talked about the prophets before, and they're the word says not to mess with the prophets. I guess that's paraphrased, of course, but not to mess with the prophets, God's anointed. And so there's some prophets out there that I hear them say that God says not to mess with the anointed, not to mess with the anointed. And they're correct. We're not supposed to do that. But he also gives us a discerning spirit to know when something's not right. And we also know, especially during the end times, that there is going to be a lot of false prophets that are going to be stepping up. And that's not even talking about the big false prophet that's going to be working side by side with the Antichrist. These are just little prophets that are going to come around and say they're prophets. And because I'm doing the Bible studies and I'm listening for news and stuff, I've been listening to the prophets. And, I was I was a little under their spell in the beginning because they were saying things I really liked. And then it's like there's like a set of like 5 or 6 of them that kind of go together. And I don't know, it's like the more I listen to them, the more far-fetched it's getting. So I'm feeling that they are not, at least a couple of them are not who they're supposed to be. Several of the things that they're saying is that we will be getting our country back, that we will be, that number 45 is going to be back in office come January. And there is a way it can happen. First off, if God wants it to happen, it'll happen. It don't matter what anyone says. But they are saying that, and they've been saying it since the elections. And then they kind of slowed down about it, and then they started talking about it again. And they're saying that we're going to go back, that our country is not, that this is not the new normal, how we're living right now, how everything's changed so much in the last 2.5 years, especially since the virus hit. And they're saying we're not going to go back to that. We're going to be even better. And that number 45 is going to be back in office, and we're going to be so much better off than we ever were. And that God is getting rid of a lot of the deep South and the deep state and getting rid of all the disrupt bad people. And we have seen some of that. I mean, we have seen, the UK's prime minister resigned, Sri Lanka's prime minister resigned, Estonia's prime minister resigned, Japan's government has resigned. Anyway, we have seen that happening. So, okay, maybe it's a possibility that's what's going on. But in the same breath, they're telling us to not even pay attention to the rapture, that's at least 100 to 200 years off. And maybe it is. But they're telling us not to worry and that we don't need to prepare, we don't need to do anything because the rapture is not coming for 100 to 200 years. Now, personally, by all my studies, my hours and hours of studies, I absolutely do not believe that. I do not believe we will be here that long. I don't think we're going to be here more than another year or two at the most. And there again, I could be wrong, but based off my studies, and based off what's going on in this crazy world of ours, I'm seeing us being gone much sooner. And so I'm having a little concern. And then my first thought was, well, maybe because they're saying 100 to 2 years, 200 years is the rapture, and you're thinking it's in the next year or two, maybe that's why they're bothering you. You know, you want it to happen sooner. So you don't want to hear that. So I had to, make sure that that's not what I was thinking. Well, there's another group of people, hang on just a second, called the truthers. Now, they have a bunch of sites on what YouTube, all those other places. And they go in and they say that they have intel that people, I guess, high up in the military, such as generals, maybe colonels, things like that, admirals, are giving them intel on what's coming up. And about a week to 10 days or so, 2 weeks maybe prior to the prophets saying Trump would be back in January, these truthers started coming online and saying, we got intel, and this is what the intel's telling us, and this is going to happen. And so they went and they said all that. And then a week and a half or so later, got your prophets saying it. So that to me put up big red flags, big red flags. So I'm just telling you again to be really careful if you are listening to these prophets. I won't give names, not right now. I don't believe God's calling me to give names. And if in the event they are truly God's prophets, I don't want to go against his prophets. Now, if we're still here in January and their prophecies don't come true, might be a different story. I might end up having to say something. Excuse me, because I don't want you guys to get fooled like I was. Now, there is one girl out there. Her name is Julie Green, Green, and you can find her on Rumble. And she seems to be really getting things right. So possibly she could be a good one. Just if you decide to go over there and start listening, please use your discerned spirit. Something don't sound right, probably isn't. Best way to tell a false prophet if the prophecies don't come true. But then also sometimes prophecies take a while. I mean, look, we're just now getting some of these prophecies from Daniel and all the other ones fulfilled now, and that's been a couple, 33,000 plus years or so ago. So I mean, sometimes prophecies can take a while. So just pay attention. But she seems to kind of be getting some things really well, and she's not far out there, she don't seem like she's far out there. So anyway, I just had to get on that tangent again because I keep up with the prophets right now. In fact, there's a couple that I'm not even going to watch anymore, but I do keep up with them because I like to hear what they say, especially if it's biblical. That's the other thing, must be biblical. Okay, so anyway, I'm off on that tangent. So let's get into the news a little bit. So the UN, the United Nations, has proclaimed unwavering commitment to de-nuke North Korea. They have made a commitment that they're going to go in and get rid of their nukes. And I don't know how they're planning on doing it, but that's what they're saying. So we'll just watch for that and see. Okay, now there has been 2 drone attacks in the last probably about 40 hours at U.S. bases in Syria. The Iranian proxies did this. So far, we're not seeing that there were any injuries or anything right now, but that did happen. So, obviously keep the Iranian people, not really saying the government, but the people. Well, I guess we should pray for the government too, but most definitely the people. And then of course our military personnel over there in your prayers. Okay, so the Iran nuclear deal talks is still going back and forth. They're not actually there right now meeting, but the United States and the European Union is still trying to come to some kind of an agreement. And I'm just going to read one of the notifications that I got from one of my people that talks about this because it was a lot to write down. So I'm just going to read what he says about that. But they've basically given us 48 hours to reply to what they are asking for. And I don't think the United States is going to go for it, but you never know. Let me see if I can. Oh, never mind. All right, we'll read that part first and then we'll go down. Okay, so Iran's answer to the powers, EU, regarding the return to the nuclear agreement does not satisfy the EU and especially not the US. Iran has agreed to the proposal regarding some of the main disputes, but insists on receiving additional economic guarantees. According to the EU's proposal, Iranian economic companies will be exempt from sanctions for a year after possible US withdrawal from the agreement. But in Iran, they are demanding a longer commitment. And that was them coming back and saying, no, I don't want this. I want this. They want more than a year. This is the best offer that Iran can receive, and it is not subject to further negotiations. If Iran continues to insist, the talks will collapse, explained the EU. Well, they just came on and said that now, and this was only a couple hours ago, that the U.S. has expressed a willingness to lift the sanctions imposed on some of the economic entities in Iran related to the Revolutionary Guards as part of the negotiations to return to the nuclear agreement. That's not good. Not good, not good. But that's what they just did. So we'll see what happens there because I just don't think they need to be going back into that deal. I just don't. Okay, so Iran's Revolutionary Guard Force announced that Iran and Russia started a joint drone exercise. Russia's military personnel are in Iran right now to learn how to use these drones. So that's another interesting thing because if you haven't watched our video on the Gog-Magog war, I would watch that because it really talks about Russia and Iran being part of that. You know, Russia is Gog. I'm sorry, Russia is Magog. And whoever the president is at the time of that war is Gog. And so as of right now, it's Putin. He's Gog. So, and they're supposed to be a big part of that Gog-Magog war. So I would go back and listen to that. And I just saw here where this came up just about maybe an hour ago that Russian President Vladimir Putin accuses the U.S. of encouraging violence in Ukraine. They need conflicts to maintain their hegemony. That's why they turn the Ukrainian people into cannon fodder. The situation in Ukraine shows that the U.S. is trying to drag the conflict out and is acting in exactly the same way in trying to fuel conflicts in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. You know, it's interesting that that just popped up because one of the parts I'm going to be reading in a minute and talking about is China saying the same thing about us that, you know, and I'm going to get to that in just a few minutes. But anyway, so I thought that was interesting that that just came over, that Russia is now saying that we are trying to instigate conflict. Are we? I don't know. China did announce, it's probably been about 4 or 5 days ago, that they did start a new exercise in the Pinghu Islands, which belong to Taiwan. So now they're not just doing exercises around Taiwan, they're going after their island that's off of Taiwan that actually goes, actually is part of Taiwan. So keep an eye, you know, that's just China being more aggressive, and we're going to see what happens there. I kind of thought they would have already attacked by now, and they haven't, so we'll see. Okay, North Korea is getting buddy with Russia, and they are now in discussions back and forth with each other, basically how to get rid of America. They hate us, so they've been talking back and forth. Okay, so there's a guy that I listen to named Watchman Adam. Y'all are welcome to, go to his page. He gave some interesting things to hear today. One of the things that we have talked about before is we've talked about Matthew 24. And I have told y'all that, or if you've listened, I've told y'all that we're doing we did a video on Matthew 24, just Matthew only. So if you want to go look at that, it's you might want to do that. I am going to just read a little blurb from it right now. And Matthew 24 is the Olivet Discourse, okay? And the disciples or the apostles had asked Jesus, hey, how are we supposed to know if the end times are coming? How are we going to know? So Christ answers them. And I'm not going to read everything. I'm just going to start at verse 6 of 24. So if you want to go listen to that video or go to Matthew 24 and read it, I would. But verse 6 says, and you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not frightened or troubled, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise up against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in place after place. And this is but the beginning, the early pains of the birth pains. And birth pains, when a woman's in labor, and she starts off dilated like till 1, and they're not that bad, but as time goes on, get closer to the baby being born, they get really bad. Well, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing everything getting worse. We started mainly with the virus, and then everything. There's been one crisis after another. So, but he does mention about the wars and rumors of wars. Obviously, we know that we're hearing that. And then he says, and this is in verse 7, for nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in place after place, in diverse places, is what he's saying. So I don't know if you've been watching, but we have been having, and this is worldwide, massive amounts of earthquakes. And I know some of you are going to say, oh, well, we get earthquakes all the time, not to this amount. I know Japan's had one, Philippines, the South Pacific Ocean has had one, Iran's had them. Oh my goodness. Well, America's had them. I know South Carolina's had them. They reported that South Carolina, which is not really a common place to have earthquakes, have increased by 700% in the last year. That's how many more earthquakes. And so, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Now, this is just some information on quakes that's happened in the last about 24 hours. There was one quake that was above a magnitude of a 6, and that's getting kind of serious. There were 10 quakes between magnitudes of 5 and 6. Those are still pretty big. There's been 30 quakes between magnitude of 4 and 5, 106 quakes between magnitude 3 and 4, 242 quakes between magnitude 2 and 3, and 454 quakes below a magnitude of a 2 that most people won't even feel. A strong magnitude of a 6.7 earthquake occurred in South Pacific Ocean in New Zealand. Okay, so that's a lot. That's 24 hours. That's not even a week's worth or a month worth. Okay, and then in quakes that have happened worldwide that were above a 3. A 3 is when you really start feeling it. In 24 hours, and this is worldwide, there were 150 quakes. Past 7 days, there were 944. Past 30 days, there were 4,888 quakes. Past 90 days is 14,814. And the past 365 days, there were 62,568 quakes. That's way above what we've used to have, what we're used to having. So, it's interesting that you got Matthew 24 saying this, and that's part of the birthing pains, and we're watching earthquakes get much bigger. And, and earthquakes, those little ones like threes and stuff, most likely aren't going to do a lot of damage. But what it's doing is it's opening the fault lines, getting those active, getting them woke up, because we have fault lines everywhere that never have done anything, or if they have, they've been so small, we didn't even know about it. But they're growing in intensity, and that's waking those fault lines up. And then when these seals and judgments and the seals and the trumpets and all that start opening, you're really going to start seeing some massive earthquakes. And there's going to be one big one that basically happens over the world. So yeah, we believe that this is waking up the fault lines. Okay, so that's why we are talking about it. And that's not even talking about volcanoes. I didn't do the research on volcanoes, but I do know it has been up as well. There was a terrorist tunnel that went from the Gaza Strip to Israel, and the Hamas, which are terrorists, they're terrorists that work under Iran. That tunnel was found, and the IDF, which is the Israel Defense Force, destroyed that tunnel. So that's good news. I highly recommend y'all, with everything going on, that we keep that full armor of God on. And if you don't know what the full armor of God is, I'm going to read it to you real quick. All right, and it's in Ephesians chapter 6. I'm going to be starting with 10, verses 10 through 16. In conclusion, be strong in the Lord, be empowered through your union with him. Draw your strength from him, that strength which he boundless might provide. Put on God's whole armor, the armor of a heavy armed soldier, which God supplies, that you may be able to successfully stand up against all the strategies and the deceits of the devil. So God gives us our own army stuff, helmets and all that. And we're going to read about that. For we are not wrestling with flesh and blood, contending only with physical opponents, but against the despotisms, against the powers, against the master spirits who are the world rulers of this present darkness, against the spirit force of wickedness in the heavenly supernatural sphere. In other words, Satan and his demons. Therefore, put on God's complete armor, that you may be able to resist and stand your ground on the evil day of danger. And having done all the crisis demands, to stand firmly in your place. Stand therefore, hold your ground, having tightened the belt of truth around your loins, and having put on the breastplate of integrity and of moral rectitude and right standing with God. And having shod your feet in preparation to face the enemy with the firm-footed stability, the promptness, and the readiness produced by the good news of the gospel of the peace. Lift up over all the covering shield of saving faith, upon which you can quench all the flaming missiles of the wicked one. So it's got a place for you to put your belt on of truth, and your breastplate of integrity, and your shield. You see, like, especially in the old days and the Roman days and stuff, where they had the shields. You put that up so that you can fight off any of the fiery darts sent to you by any evil. Okay. and take the helmet of salvation and the sword that the Spirit wields, which is the Word of God. You must have that Word of God. That's the best way to fight evil, is with the Word of God. That's how you know if there's a false prophet. That's how you know if things aren't right. Knowing the Word of God. You know, when Jesus started his ministry after he was baptized with John the Baptist, he went into the wilderness for 40 days to pray, and Satan tempted him like 3 times. And Jesus used the Word of God to rebuke him. Okay, so that's the best way to do it. Okay, let's continue. Pray at all times, on every occasion and every season, in the Spirit, with all manner of prayer and entreaty. To that end, keep alert and watch with strong purpose and perseverance, interceding in behalf of all the saints. So stay in prayer and intercede on the saints. So in other words, we need to pray for everyone, that are especially saints, and saints would be Christians. And well, you should definitely pray for the non-Christians, but the Christians, this is talking about from the evil schemes the devil will throw at us. Because, you know, once we accept Christ, he comes at us, Satan comes at us much harder. We have a dart on our back because now we are basically, we're a threat. That's the best word I can come up with for that. We are a threat to Satan. Now, as non-Christians, you're not a threat because you're not out preaching the word. If you're a Christian and you're backsliding and you're not out telling people about Christ, you're not a threat. But if you're telling people about Christ, you are a threat and you're going to have a dart on your back. So, yeah, this is why you need this. Okay? And that is the full armor of God. So you want to read chapter 6, verses 10 through 18. I'd go through 18, but that is in Ephesians, okay? But yeah, we've got to keep that armor on. That is the only way we can protect ourselves. Okay, so the Queen in England is getting ready to announce the new Prime Minister. It's either going to be today or tomorrow. I believe there's 2 people she's choosing from, so I'm curious to see who she picks. And is it going to be better than the one they had? Worse? Let's wait and see. Okay, so today, Turkey and U.S.-backed Kurdish fighters got into a shootout, with guns today in northern Syria. And the reason that I'm talking about that is because, Turkey's going to be part of the Gog-Magog war as well. And Turkey, we weren't hearing a whole lot about them. And here recently, we've really been hearing. So they're definitely starting to get involved in things. So that's why I went ahead and talked about that. And remember this, there were a few days ago, 6 Democrats, and I'm not sure who they were, but they actually went to Taiwan. Okay, and I don't know why they did, but basically they said they were not going to be scared of China. So they went to Taiwan. And personally, I think that's just edging on the goose. I mean, why would you? If there's a great reason for it, fine. But Taiwan's already in enough problems with China. Why would you go and instigate that and cause it to get worse? And like I said, I don't really know why they went. But, now you have Russia, who was just announced that the U.S. is instigating issues in Ukraine. And now we have China saying that we're instigating aggression in Taiwan. Okay. So yeah, people are not liking this a whole lot right now. I don't like that. I like being the superpower. All right. So on Sunday night, today is Tuesday. On Sunday night, Israel had some airstrikes. They took some airstrikes and they hit Iranian targets near the Russian base in Syria and close to Damascus. Okay, now in Isaiah, if you read about Damascus, it says during the end times that Damascus will become a ruinous heap. And now Damascus definitely is not in near as good a condition as it used to be because it has been hit before, but it's not a ruinous heap. So that still is something that's going to happen. And what is so weird about them, about Israel hitting Russia's area, is that they've never really done that before. Okay. So now they're doing it right under Russia's face. So, and it is, I'm pretty sure the first time something like that has happened. And so now, and so, and originally when, Israel is always sending missiles into Syria, because what happens is Iran wants to be in Syria because they'll be closer to Israel and they want to go in and have a closer spot to bomb them and take care of them and blow them off the map, which is, they want to destroy little Satan, which is what Iran calls Israel's little Satan. And they want to destroy it. So they want to be in Syria. Okay. So all this time, Russia's got troops in Syria as well. Last I heard, it was like 10,000. And Russia has kind of not said a whole lot in the past about Israel attacking in Syria. And now Israel's not attacking people. They're going after the places that Iran is leaving their cargo. When I say cargo, bombs, ammunition, all that. So Israel's destroying that because they are not going to allow Iran to attack them. And they're certainly not going to allow Iran to get nukes. Okay, so we know this is coming. We know this war is coming. Well, Russia and Iran now are getting buddies. Okay, they're like buddies. And they never have in the past, but right now Russia doesn't really have a whole lot of allies. So they take what they can get. And Iran is one of their allies. And so Iran now is sending cargo ships into Russia. Okay, they're sending the drones and different things to Russia. And I still heard there have been like 400 planes so far. Normally there's only like 6 a year that goes to Russia. Now there's like 400 planes that's gone in the last months. So tells you something's going on. But Russia's been kind of quiet about these attacks in Syria. Well, now that they're buddies with Iran, Iran is like, wait a minute, we're helping you with this. You need to get Israel out of Syria. So now they're bringing Russia into that as well. So I figure in the next, short period of time, Russia's going to do something. And so be looking out for that. I'm seeing it happening. Okay, so there, Iran is also, this is so strange to me because if it's happened in America, I've never heard about it. Now, I'm sure things can happen behind the scenes, but I personally have not heard about this, that Iran is targeting people in the US. They are hiring hitmen to come in and take out people in the US. One of the ones that they threatened is former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. They've threatened number 45. And they've also threatened to hire hitmen for John Bolton, which is a former national security advisor for 45. Okay, so they've been threatening it. So, they've got extra security and whatnot, and they're on high alert for that. But one of the people they didn't tell us or say they were going to do, or we didn't take it seriously or whatever, was a guy named Salman, Salman, Rushdie, Rushdie. Okay, so he is an author, okay? And he wrote a book in 1989 that's called The Satanic Verses. And Iran says this book is blaspheming Islamic, okay? So they don't like him. So they hired an Iranian regiment sympathizer who was 25 years old, went in and stabbed this Salman guy multiple times. He's still in the hospital and he did survive. So we're glad about that. Iran is denying any involvement, but then they turned around and put it on one of their sites that they did it. So I don't know. I'd say they did it probably. And what is weird is, what's even worse is this happened in New York City. He was getting up to give a speech, and this is when it happened. So it's on American soil now. So, and kind of in my opinion, they probably used him as someone that's easier to get to than like Mike Pompeo or number 45. And so they wanted to show that, hey, we're going to do this. We mean business. We're coming on your soul. And that's what I'm thinking is what's probably happened. That was not reported. That's Barbie's personal opinion. So, but anyway, that's what I'm talking about. I've never seen something like this in the US. It's crazy. It just gets worse and worse and worse. Okay, so in the past, I've talked about animals and how crazy they've been acting. They're just, I've talked about it several times. More bear attacks, more alligator attacks, more shark attacks, just bison, things that you don't normally. I mean, yes, we have alligator attacks. Yes, we have shark attacks, but not in the amount that we're having right now. We're having just so many. It's just weird. And when we get in, I'm going to get into Revelation chapter 6, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. And that is going to be the seals. But the next thing I'm going to talk about, though, is since we're talking about animals, is there's these animals called snow monkeys, and they're in India, and they're usually pretty just whatever, not bothersome too much. And I haven't read a report on it in about 4 or 5 days, but when I read it about 4 or 5 days ago, they're having attacks by these snow monkeys. And as of 4 or 5 days ago, 45 attacks. And they're not attacking for food. They're attacking with aggression. They are literally breaking in people's windows and attacking. And who they're attacking is toddlers and elderly people. They don't seem to be attacking other people. I don't know. And it's not common because that's not something they do, much less break in. I mean, it's crazy. And they're not going after food. They're going after aggression only. They're just attacking. It's almost like the big monkey dude, the general of the snow monkeys, is given an order to go out and attack these people in India. Crazy, huh? And so that's just another example why the animals are going a little bonkers. And it does talk about in times that, and I think it's more when the tribulation starts than during the birthing pains, which we think we're experiencing now, but that wild beasts will devour people and go crazy. So is this a precursor? I don't know. It's interesting though, regardless. Okay, so we all know, I'm sure, and I think we talked about this last time, about number 45 being raided by the FBI. And I know some people argue with the terminology raided, but whatever. They almost like 25, 30 FBI agents went into his home in Mar-a-Lago in Florida while he was in New York and New Jersey with a warrant. And they were there 9 hours, which and their reasoning was someone told them that number 45, of course, we're going to find more information out as time goes on, but number 45 had some documents that he did not return to the National Archives. And what's strange about it is about last June that they came in then, but in a different way. They didn't come in as a raid, and they took multiple boxes and stuff. And 45 told them, hey, let me know what else you need, and so thought everything was cool. And apparently wasn't for whatever reason. But anyway, some of these people tipped off the FBI that he had some documents that didn't need to be there. Now, this is per them, and we've heard of whistleblowers before and never knew who they were. And, in fact, number 45 was impeached the first time based off this whistleblower's accusation and whatnot, plus, some other stuff. But of course, he wasn't convicted and all, but now you've got this again. So It's kind of interesting. And if you're someone that does not like number 45, that's fine. I mean, I'm not going to get into a political, I'm just repeating what has come out. And I do know that number 45 said they took three of his passports. And my first question was, why you got three passports? Nobody else was asking that question at first. And I'm like, why you got three passports? I got one. Well, come to find out one, maybe even two were expired. But also someone that travels out of the country a lot, their passport, it's good for 10 years and that thing gets full. So they would have a second passport because, every time you go into a country, it's stamped. And so if you're someone that's traveling outside the country, then yeah, you're going to have a lot of stamps on your pages and you're going to run out of room. And so you're going to have a new passport. So if he had that with an expired passport, that kind of makes sense to me. But I did want to read you something that this is actually from the New York Post. And it was just a few days ago. And they posted that at the end of his presidency, Barack Obama trucked 30 million pages of his administration's records to Chicago, promising to digitize them and eventually put them online, a move that outraged historians. More than 5 years after Obama's presidency ended, the National Archives webpage reveals that 0 pages have been released. Obama's home was never raided by the FBI. Okay, so, and like I said, if you don't like 45, that's fine. But what's fair is fair. I personally do like him, but what's fair is fair. So that reading that from the New York Post, and they're so anti 45 and so pro 44 that you gotta question that. You gotta question that and ask what, why would that be? And the other question that I would ask is they got this warrant on August 5th. And it was by a judge. I forget his name, Bernhardt. He was a magistrate court judge, and I guess he's a judge that could do it. My only concern with him signing off on this warrant is there is a suit against Hillary Clinton in number 45 that he recused himself on just a couple months ago. So when a judge recuses themselves, it's because they have too much personal a relationship as a friend, too much personal information, whatever, but they'll recuse themselves. And did recuse himself from this. So, but I also know he donates to the Democratic Party. So it might have been a Hillary thing, but it still brings to question, why did you not recuse from this? But anyway, so that was just another something interesting. And like I said, we'll hear more and see more going on, and as time goes on. So, but I did just want to kind of catch up on that. I am hearing now, I don't know if y'all have heard this or not, but the Jewish rabbis believe some reason, and I'm not 100% sure, but a lot of them are believing that the Messiah is coming in October. Now, if you don't know anything about the Jewish religion, we have the same God, Christianity and Jewish religion, but Jewish religion, and they believe that a Messiah is coming, but they do not believe it's Jesus. They don't believe the Messiah came. They expected Jesus to ride in with an army behind him and destroy Rome and anyone that went against the Jews. And that's not how Jesus came in. He came in with love, and he taught love, and he taught the new covenant and shed his blood for us so that we could be sin free and have a relationship with the Father. And, it was very difficult in the Jewish customs to do that because you had to go through the high priest. Well, Jesus is the high priest now. And so they did not believe that. And so they rejected Jesus. And so they still believe a new Messiah is coming. And they believe it's happening in October, and they're planning on putting one in place. Now, if y'all hear something different, please tell me. And that is opening up the can of worms for the Antichrist right there. Okay, so just remember that. That is opening up something for the Antichrist, because we know the Messiah's already came. Yeah. So just something to watch again. Now, there is a new person. I don't know. I just found him through a referral, and he's on YouTube. And his name is Dana, Dana Coverstone, Coverstone. And he has a YouTube channel, and I had never heard of him. Now, he is not a prophet, but he does have dreams. And if you read the end times information, I think I'm pretty sure it's in Revelation. I can't remember the chapter. Talks about men will have dreams and visions and whatnot. So that is going to intensify the closer we get to the end time. So we're going to hear of a lot of people having a lot of dreams. In fact, there's a lot of rapture dreams out there right now, way more than ever in the past, because people are having dreams. But he put out a video a couple of days ago, and it's called The Hail to the Chief Dream. Hail to the Chief Dream. I've listened to it. It's really interesting. I listened to it yesterday, and it's really interesting. So yeah, I would listen to it if you guys got time. And of course, we talked about China calling. Actually, when China's not just saying, and we're moving on, China's not just saying that they believe the U.S. is antagonizing the Taiwanian situation. They are actually asking the UN summit to go against us regarding this. Okay, so that's interesting too. So they're bringing the UN in. Okay, I've got a couple of people who have mentioned to me that there is no such thing as the word rapture in the Bible. So, not that they don't believe the end times is going to happen, but they don't believe in the rapture. They believe that only the second coming is going to happen at the end of the tribulation, and that God's people will not be taken out prior to the tribulation or even in the middle of the tribulation. But they don't believe that that's going to happen, because they say the word rapture is not in the Bible. And I just wanted to clarify something real quick. If you were to go to, oops, hold on. First Thessalonians 17. First Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 17. It says, Then we, the living ones who remain on the earth, shall simultaneously be caught up along with the resurrected dead in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so always through the eternity of the eternities, we shall be with the Lord. Okay, now it's saying that we will be caught up along with the resurrected dead in the clouds to meet Jesus. Now, in the second coming, we know for a fact that Jesus is coming down and will be touching foot on the earth. Okay, so, and he's going to be coming with all the saints, and that's going to be at the end of the world, at the end of tribulation. And it's going to be when the war Armageddon happens, and he is going to defeat anyone that's taken the mark, anyone that's gone against, has not accepted him, including the Antichrist, the false prophet, and the why do I always do this? Antichrist, false prophet, and Satan. They're going to, he is going to defeat them, and they will go into, Satan's going to go into the pit for 1,000 years, but the Antichrist, the false prophet, is going to automatically be put in the lake of fire. and as well as anyone that took the mark of the beast that are still on the earth that have rejected Jesus and are trying to fight him, because at that point, that's what's going to be happening. They're all going to be congregating together to actually try to fight Jesus. You really have to have a really hard heart to look up and see Jesus coming in the sky and try to fight him. I mean, you have to. I just can't even fathom doing that. So anyway, that's what this is about. When it's talking about the rapture. It is not talking about the second coming. So it says shall simultaneously be caught up along with the resurrected dead in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. Okay. So that's not Jesus touching down. That is the rapture. Now, people who say the word rapture is not in the Bible would be correct somewhat, because when you read our New King James versions and you read this verse, it doesn't say rapture, it says caught up. Okay, so they would be right. But what I want to do is just tell you how that word came to be. And when you're studying the Bible, like what I'm reading out of right now is the Amplified version, but I typically study out of King James. You got to remember they've been translated. The New Testament was written, the Old Testament was originally in Hebrew, and then it was translated to Greek. The New Testament was in Latin, translated to Greek, and then they were all translated to English. So when you're looking up when you're doing studies, you want to look in like the Strong Concordance or something and look up these words and make sure that you are getting the right translation, okay? Because caught up is the Latin word for rapio. Can't say that. It's rapio, rapio. Okay, that's the Latin word for caught up. You take the rapio word, and the Greek translation is harpazo. Harpazo means to be caught up, to forced away, to be taken up, to be yanked up. Okay, and the word harpazo in the original Greek translation is found 17 times in the New Testament. Okay, so that word does translate into rapture. Well, the original word was rapio, which was caught up. That was your Latin word. Greek went into harpazo. Harpazo. We get rapture from the Latin word rapio or rapiro. It just is translated. Okay. It's so, yes, rapture is indeed in the Bible. Okay. So I just wanted to kind of tell y'all that because I can see where that can be confusing. If someone says, oh, it's not there, see, it doesn't say it. But if you're not studying translations, you miss things. You gotta be real careful. One last thing that I'm going to do, and then we'll be done and caught up as best as I can. So we're going to go to Revelation 6, and I'm just going to read what the first 4 seals are. Now, if you haven't watched, Flora and I did a video on the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, the 7 bowls, and the 3 woes that explain what each one is. But I'm going to go over the first 4, and then I'm going to read something that I was hearing about this morning. Okay, so we're going to start with chapter 6, and we're going to go through verses 1 through 8. Okay. Then I saw as the Lamb broke open one of the 7 seals. And as if in a voice of thunder, I heard one of the 4 living creatures call out, "Come." And I looked and saw there was a white horse whose rider carried a bow, and a crown was given him. And he rode forth conquering and to conquer. Now, if you want to see any of the prophecies on that white horse, you can go to Psalms 45:4 and 5. You can go to Zechariah 1:8. You can also go to Zechariah 6:1 through 3. Okay, so that was the white horse who carries a bow, and he rode forth conquering and to conquer. And when he broke the second seal, I heard the second living creature call out, "Come." And another horse came out, flaming red, and its rider was empowered to take the peace from the earth, so that men slaughtered one another, and he was given a huge sword. When he broke open the third seal, I heard the third living creature call out, "Come and look." And I saw, and behold, a black horse, and in his hand the rider had a pair of scales, which is a balance. You know how in the olden days they weighed like their gold? They had the little balance. Of course, it's always used in judicial stuff, but it's a balance, right? That's how they weighed their gold. And made it, however, that's how they charged and how they were able to get payments and how they, charged for whatever, gold, silver, food, whatever. That's what they did. Okay. And so it's a balance. Okay. And then I heard what seemed to be a voice from the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, but do not harm the oil and the wine." And if you want to understand that, you can go to 2 Kings 6:25. Now, let's go back to the first seal. It's a white horse whose rider carried a bow, and a crown was given him. And he rode forth conquering and to conquer. That is believed that is the Antichrist coming on the scene. Okay. That's what that's what we believe that is the Antichrist coming on the scene. Okay, then we're going to go into the second seal. And this horse, you hear about the 4 horses of the apocalypse. These are the 4 horses. This one is red. It's flaming red. And its rider was empowered to take the peace from the earth, so that men slaughtered one another, and he was given a huge sword. Well, taking peace from the earth and men slaughtering each other is not just us killing each other. And I don't know if you ever watch anything, but every time I see something, 8 people are being shot and 10 people are being shot, people are killing. But it's also taking the peace from the earth would be war. Okay. So even though Jesus tells us in Matthew 24 that there will be wars of rumors and wars, but do not be alarmed, because this is not the end. These things must happen. We really believe those are the birthing pains leading us up to this seal. Okay. So that's going to be taking peace from the earth, and it's going to be wars and people fighting against each other. And when he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature call, "Come and look." And I saw a black horse. In his hand, the rider had a pair of scales. Okay, we talked about that. That is going to be resembling food, how food and things are going to be given out, because we're going to have famine. Okay. So I believe that's how that's going to work. And we're going to have famine for several reasons, and I'm going to give you some of them in just a minute. And then the fourth, okay, so I'm sorry, we're going to be reading to the 8th verse. So the fourth seal, the third seal, I'm sorry, the third seal was talking about a quart of wheat for a denarius. Now, a denarius is a whole day's wages. So it's going to cost you your entire day's wages to basically buy a loaf of bread, which would be equivalent to like a quart of wheat. And 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, because barley is not as expensive. So you can get 3 quarts for that. So that's going to be a full day's wage just to be able to buy that. Okay, just to get basically a loaf of bread. Okay, and then when the Lamb broke open the fourth seal, I heard the fourth living creature call out, "Come." So I looked, and behold, an ashy pale horse, black and blue, as if made so by bruising, and its rider's name was Death, and Hades, the realm of the dead, followed him closely. And they were given authority and power over a fourth part of the earth to kill with sword and with famine and with plague, which are pestilence and disease, and with wild beasts of the earth. And if you want to look at some prophecies for that, you can go to Ezekiel 5:12 and Hosea 13:14 as well. Okay, so that's interesting, right? Writer's name was Death in Hades, which means he's bringing death with him. And they're given authority and power over a fourth part of the earth to kill with the sword and with famine and plagues. Well, what's going to happen when there's wars causing deaths, and then you're having starvation and famine? That's going to be where people fight against each other because they're going to be trying to get food. And then you got wars and death, and those people are going to be fighting. All the militaries are going to be fighting against each other, and then we're eventually going to get in it. So that's the first four seals. Now, these are pretty much similar things to what Jesus said as far as the birthing pains, things that we're going to see. So that's where I feel we are right now. We are in those birthing pains, but we're getting to these seals very close. Now, some people will tell you the first few have already opened, and that is a possibility. I've never claimed to be 100% right by any means. I think that I can see why some people think that the first four seals have opened, but I believe they're going to be way worse than what we're seeing right now. And that is why I don't necessarily believe they've opened, and I do believe that we are still in the birthing pains. Okay, so this is what I read this morning. Obviously, we know that there have been droughts everywhere. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but we are actually eating last year's food. I did not know that. We actually are eating last year's food. This year, farmers are only expecting 30% of their crops from what they're used to having. So we're already seeing food shortages. And when something happens, it typically happens in America last. And we're seeing food shortages. So can you imagine what's going on in our third world countries and things that, well, we know what happened in Sri Lanka. They were out of food and stuff, so they overtook the government. They got to do something because they're hungry, and so they're expecting 30% of the crops that we normally get. And if we're already experiencing some famine off of last year's crops, imagine what next year is going to be like. Is that going to be opening our seals? Maybe. Okay, so food next year is expecting to double, if not triple, in cost. Sounds like our full days of wages of denarius. China, we have to ask ourselves, well, China is buying up our land. Okay, so we really need to understand that. Is it to keep us from being able to have more farmland, try to starve us out? I don't know. But that's concerning to me. They should not be buying our land. Fertilizer has tripled in price, which is causing farmers to have a harder time planting their crops because the fertilizer has tripled. And even if they are getting to do that, they're having to give us the cost. So we're going to only get 30% of our food from 30% of the expecting 30% of crops this year, but then you got also raising those prices because of the fertilizer and other costs going up. A day's wages, right? Sound familiar? Cost of living is getting insane. Right now, the median rent, which is the midpoint, is almost $2,000. It's about $2,000 right now. Can you imagine renting a one-bedroom little small house that we used to pay like $700, $800 for at the most, depending on where you live? Now you're paying $2,000. Even if you're making that $15 an hour in the fast food places, you can't pay a $2,000 mortgage unless you got multiple people living there with you. It's almost impossible. And right now, the median income is only $34,000. That can't afford a $2,000 a month. That's $24,000 a year. The median income is $34,000. And by the time they tax us to that, there's none of that left. And are you going to, even if you can afford the $2,000 off of that, you're not going to have food money, gas money, nothing. Right now, they're showing the top 10% in the country are still doing okay. And that's, of course, your millionaires and billionaires. But the other 90% are not. They are, the 401ks are losing massive amounts. Their savings are being dwindled. I mean, yeah, it's getting worse. Inflation's getting worse. Inflation is worse now than it was with Jimmy Carter. And, we've always said Jimmy Carter was the worst president. And it's actually worse than them. We've actually gotten it, we've actually bypassed what his inflation was. And we really haven't seen anything in regards to the food shortages because we are still eating last year's food. So y'all stop. Another example of, of what's happening is, like, for instance, this year, Idaho is short on their potatoes, Idaho potatoes, but it's because of last year's drought. Okay, so it's because of what happened last year to them. But now they're short on potatoes, but they're still facing the same stuff, the fertilizer and all that. And even Europe right now, and in the past couple of weeks, have been having heat waves. I think they're finally getting back to normal, but they've had horrible heat waves, and that never happens in Europe. I mean, that just does not happen. So we just need to remember that when all these things do start happening, unless God intervenes, which he very well could, or this could really truthfully be the end times. And he's just saying, you know what, guys, read my word, get in the book, see what's coming, get ready. And as of right now, that's what I feel he's doing. And again, I could be wrong. We'll find out, right? So better be prepared, though. So but if all these things do happen and we only have 30% of the crops next year, and even though we have 30%, we're fighting over that food, prices are going to go up. So we can't even afford it if we could get it. So that's going to make some massive civil unrest, not just in third world countries, but here too. Okay, because we're not used to that. That's not something we ever have had to deal with. Okay, that is nothing. Even if we're out of a job for whatever reason, there's still food stamps that we can get some food, most likely. So there's still some, there's food pantries, there's things. But like I reported last week, the food pantries expect to be out by the end of the year. So don't depend on those. Don't depend on those. So anyway, this is going to lead to some serious civil unrest, which is taking peace from the country, from the world, all of these four seals, okay? And those are going to be the first things that open when we do indeed go into the end times, okay? And we're definitely almost there. If we have not already definitely started, we're definitely almost there. And don't forget, suicide is going to go up. It's going to go up even worse. We saw that in COVID. People are going to be losing hope, and we need to pray hard, pray. And if you haven't accepted Christ, I'm just going to say it, get on the ball, quit waiting. Okay. Nobody's promised tomorrow. We could wake up tomorrow or even this afternoon and go in a car ride and get killed in a car accident, or who knows? Things can happen. We don't know. Don't wait. Don't think, oh, well, if the rapture does happen, I can still do it during those 7 years. Not necessarily. Don't forget, when the rapture happens, there's going to be airline pilots that are Christians that are going to be raptured flying a 757 with 200 people in it. And what's going to happen? That plane going to come down. Okay, so don't think that's a safety net for you, because it is not a safety net. You are not promised. And I'm not trying to scare people. As a Christian, this is an amazing time to live through. To think that if this is the end times, that God has privileged us with being able to see it unfold and see things in Revelation and in Daniel and all these other prophecy books that we've read over these years and have heard Jesus is coming, Jesus is coming, Jesus is coming, but he didn't come. And we just keep waiting, and we know by faith it's going to happen. But to see all these things tying together and everything happening has never happened before. And so we really do believe in the next year or so, this is going to happen. It could happen tonight. We don't know. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen in, 30 seconds. We don't know. But what we do know is signs are there. So And I wasn't planning on kind of getting on that today, but I was planning on just doing the news. But as we've spoken before, as I've said before, the Holy Spirit always gets me and gives me extra things to talk about, and that's what he just did. So, anywho, we love you guys. We appreciate you watching us so, so, so much. We really do. And we would really appreciate you sharing our videos. We really want to reach as many people as we can. We don't want to see anyone perish. We don't want anyone going to the lake of fire. We want everyone to be able to live in heaven if we die first, or for rapture, we'll live in heaven for a short period, but we'll come back to the earth and live in the millennial. But we don't want you down in the burning. We want you to come and rejoice with us and meeting Jesus's glory and God, and God, and just, it's just going to be so fascinating. So anyway, if you guys have questions, you can email me at twofriendsinthebible@gmail.com, or you can just leave a comment, whichever one you want to do. And we really would appreciate you guys subscribing and checking like, please make me feel loved. And if you want to click on that notification bell, you can. That will notify you every time we upload a video. Some people just go to YouTube, and so they don't want to be notified. But, if you do, that's what you can do. And I'm planning on being back on Thursday to do another update. I'm assuming it's going to be much shorter than this one because it's only a day and a half worth of news. So I might wait till Friday. We'll see what's going on Thursday. But either way, one of those 2 days, we'll definitely be getting that going. Okay. And we're also going to be starting in a couple of weeks, we're going to be starting a Bible study on Zoom. So you can just do it on the Zoom. You can do it on your phone, your tablet, your computer. Zoom is free, it doesn't cost you. And we're going to be doing the life and ministry of Paul. So I think you might be really interested in that. I really like his story. I like all the stories, but I like his too because of who he was before he started teaching about Christ. Who he was and how God used him. And I just think that's so amazing. It shows anyone can be used. So, okay, guys, we love you. Y'all have an awesome week. Thank you.